We have our announcements, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. Copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby of this conference room. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please write your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the lobby. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please sign in on that same sheet. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available in the lobby. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
I'd like to call the Board of Zoning Appeals to order. And we have one item. We have the minutes of July 26, 2018 to take up. And we have John McKay, John Daly, and Cindy Miles absent from that meeting, so everyone else can vote, and we do have a quorum.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Warren, seconded by Mr. Richardson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you get the abstentions? Thank you.
Looking for the vote sheet. You took it out of order off me. You got it. Okay, we got it.
This time we'll call the Board of Metropolitan Area Planning Commission to order. And we have minutes from the 24th of May to consider. And I was absent. Lowell Richardson was absent. Bob Duell, Don Klossmeyer, and Joshua Blick, and Rob Hartman. So do we have a
Move to approve.
Second.
do we have a quorum?
I don't think we have.
I think we got a quorum.
Oh.
Who all was here to do this?
Who all was here?
Mr. Florence, you were here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Mr. Johnson, we need you.
Good time.
Good timing, Bill.
For what? Approve minutes.
Just say yes.
Yeah.
Warren, second by Excuse me, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And abstentions? Aye. Okay,
For the abstentions.
right. Okay. I'm,
I got 4. So I stopped at Klossmeyer. There should be Hartman.
Yeah.
Mr. Klosmeyer was absent, yeah. So that's 5.
5. So that's, oh, there's 12 here. Okay. Yeah.
705.
705.
Cool. Or we'll take it up if somebody else gets here. Okay. Let's go to our agenda.
I got 24 sets of 12.
It's July 12th.
June 21st.
Just did 21st, but we can't do it.
May 24th.
Oh, no, 24th, okay. June 21st, we have John McKay, Bob Dewell, and Don. So we have a quorum for that one. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Miles and a second by Mr. Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, 2 abstentions. Now we go to July 12th. And those members absent was Joshua, Don, and Chuck Warren.
Move we approve minutes, July 12th.
Motion by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Richardson. Any discussion, Mr. Foster?
No, just real quickly, I noticed a few pages turned around in there, but I'll get with staff and get that clarified.
Please do. Okay. Do we have any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstain. Okay,
Hartman and Klossmeyer, is that it?
yes, just 2. Now we can go to today's agenda, starting with the subdivision. One-step final plat for Kellogg Crossings Edition. Anybody on the commission would like to hear that one? Anybody in the audience wishing to hear that plat? Seeing none, we'll take that by consensus. One-step final plat for the Country Hollow Second Edition. Anybody wish to hear that one? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishing to hear that? Okay, we'll take that by consensus. 2-3, the Barnum Second Edition. Anybody wishing to hear that item on the commission? Seeing none, anyone in the audience? Seeing none, can we have a motion for 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3?
Move to approve.
Who made the motion? Mr. Warren and Mr. Lawrence seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And no abstentions, except for those not here. All right, so that's 12-0 on those 3. Okay, public hearing for vacation items. Of one item, city vacation of street right-of-way that is landlocked from other street right-of-ways. Do we have anyone that wants to hear that item? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishing to hear item 3-1? Seeing none,
Move we approve. Second.
Mr. Green made the motion, Rob made the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 12-0. Our first case is be heard is item 4, which is 2018-00031, a county conditional use for a major utility in a limited commercial LC zoning. Anyone on the commission wishing to hear that item? Anyone in the audience for that item? We will hear that item. Zoning case 2018-00032, item number 5 on your agenda. City zone change from LC limited commercial to CBD Central Business District. Anyone in the commission wishing to hear that item? Anyone in the audience wants to hear that one too? And we're going to hear number 6, so let's just start off with number 4. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This case is a,
Wait a minute.
Would we, just from a time standpoint, would we want to go ahead and, is this number 7 going to be short, or is that going to take some time?
Number 7
Yeah.
is withdrawn.
It's withdrawn? Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, Dave?
this request is from essentially Cox Communication. They've acquired the property outlined in the black on the screen at roughly the south east corner of 21st Street North and 167th Street West. It was zoned LC, limited commercial, a number of years ago. Cox has now acquired that with the intention of constructing a maintenance facility or essentially a switching facility for, they've got two fiber optic lines that come together in this general location. This is the aerial that shows the property in question. You can see where it sits on the future land use map. This is the site plan that was provided by the applicant. And you can see off of 167th Street, we have a long driveway comes in, and then a square area at the east end of the property. There will be a block building constructed there. The applicant's got information that they can share with that. This building is windowless, as I understand it. It's heavily secured because it's has switching and computer equipment in it. You'll notice on the site plan, we've got generators out here that are to provide continual interior heating and air system, because this is computer equipment that's got to be climate controlled. Pictures of the area. This is on 167th Street looking east back towards the site. You can see it's essentially just a bean field. This is looking southeast, roughly from that same location. Here we're looking northwest, back on the west side of 167th Street. It really went crazy on me here. That's 21st Street. The power poles are along 21st Street in the background. This is looking southwest from the site. This is looking almost due west on the west side of 167th Street. This is looking north along 167th Street back towards 21st Street and ultimately way north towards Colwich. And this is looking south on 167th Street. So there is a presentation here, or at least the applicant is represented. So I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions at this time? Yes, Mr. Daly.
On the map there, is the 1.17 acres just that darkened part?
Yes.
And is that all that Cox bought?
Yes.
Or is they buy the whole?
No, that's all that they bought.
Okay, thank you.
And I should note, you should have at your desk minutes from the Citizens Advisory Board meeting for District 3 that heard this back on August 6th. And they have asked that the, one of the conditions that we add a condition that on the east side and then along the south side of the compound, there'll be landscape buffer at such time as future development, since this is all zone residential, might occur, which if you're so inclined, that's a condition that could be added to what's outlined within the staff report.
Questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to the agent or applicant.
You got your,
Will Clevenger with Garver, and we have Wayne Frank here also. And we don't have, we're in agreement with staff comments, and I guess we do have a presentation we could share with you if you'd like to see it. But we'd also be able to stand for any questions you have.
Wayne Frank with Michael Baker International. Just real quick, this is just some simple renderings of the site, what the building is going to look like. This is
Sir, can you give your name and address?
Wayne Frank with Michael Baker, 80 West Betsy Lane, Gilbert, Arizona.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry. This is the site plan that was applied that you saw just a second ago. I'm gonna skip forward to basically some images, just a CMU building, a couple of stripes down the building, give it some character. It's within the acceptable heights and area sizes, but as mentioned, it just holds communications equipment for Cox and their service to the community. And that's
Warren.
Obviously, this is in a rural area, but it's a pretty plain box. You know, it may be 5 years, it may be 20 years before development comes up around this. What kind of screening do you have around it? I mean, it's pretty plain. If a subdivision right now around it, we'd be talking about a lot of screening and that type of thing. What can you tell me about either doing it now or doing it later?
So right now, we only show just a chain link fence around the site as it's just agricultural there. But Cox would be willing to modify that as needed for screening in future or currently.
Thank you.
What is the setback from the border lines where there needs to be screening in the future? And is there room for appropriate
Yeah,
screening?
I'm not sure if you can tell here. There's a 10-foot setback on the south side. That's the requirement. That's the setback requirement. It's here, this dash line. But we are about 75 feet from that southern edge to the building, and on the east side we are 84 feet to the edge from that on the west side.
So you have plenty of room for
Yeah.
future screening.
Mr. Warren.
I'm assuming this is similar. There's a complex near Derby, right off railroad tracks in Derby. Does it have a lot of air conditioning or some kind of equipment that keeps this?
Yes.
A fair amount of, not a huge amount of noise, but it is fairly noisy.
So one thing that was mentioned about we talked about the generators outside. On the rooftop are the air conditioning units that service the building. The generators are only there for emergency power. They're probably powered up for maybe half an hour a month just to keep them running and do maintenance. But they do not run unless there's a power outage and a failure on the site. So other than the rooftop units that run like a normal building would, there's no additional.
Is it a requirement that, I don't know, I'm assuming you got computers or something like that you have to keep those at a certain temperature?
Yes.
What's the temperature you have to keep the inside of that building at? And how often do those air conditioners run?
The air conditioners run pretty much 24/7 as long as there's equipment. At the start of the building, not all of the units will be up and running. They'll be up and running as they fill it with the equipment, as the development occurs in the area. So, I mean, they'd have one or two rooftop units. I think we have 6 right now. They'd have 1 or 2 running at the beginning, and then they'd run more as they have more equipment in the building.
As you've developed these in areas that may be a little closer to residential properties, do you have a system for mitigating the noise that those air conditioning units produce?
We have in the past. We've done stuff for Cox even in residential areas, and we've never had a complaint about the rooftop units. We have a tall parapet. You can see here the parapet extends past the edge of the units, so it hides the units and also buffers that sound. on the
What is that,
rooftop.
what material is that made of?
That's the CMU is continued up above that 4 or 5 feet to hide those and to keep that sound from just going straight out.
Thank you.
Mr. Foster.
If you go back to the site plan, please.
Yes.
I'm studying that carefully. I'm following up on Mr. Daly's question. There's a 10-foot easement on the south, and there's a 10-foot easement on the east. And I'm trying to figure out how you make room for any type of landscape buffer, and I'm not seeing any space for it. So I think there's a suggestion here to take a look at this and see what it's going to take to get that buffer in there. Frankly, it looks like you need additional property.
Let's have Mr. Miller make a comment, first of all.
Yeah, I need to make a clarification. They are required to provide this zoning screening, which would be the 6-foot fence, or they could do berms or landscaping or some combination. But they are required, if this is rezoned LC, to screen their site from the adjoining properties on the interior and rear. The county doesn't have a landscape requirement, so they could put up a solid 6-foot fence and meet that requirement. A chain link fence with slats in it does not qualify, for whatever that's worth.
So back to Mr. Foster's question after this clarification. Thank you, Dale.
So, I'm sorry, the question was regarding, the setbacks for area for landscaping. If we would need to require that, we could make areas that southern drive can be shortened to add a landscaping buffer there if we need to. We're also prepared to meet the screening requirements of the site for the fencing and wall.
It looks like you could tighten up on this drive that, what, 20 some odd feet wide?
Yep. We could do it all the way until that southwestern entry would be a little tough. We'd have to maybe get some radiuses and figure out what that would be there, but we could do it the rest of the way.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions
Yeah,
for the
question. Just a comment.
applicant? Mr. Richardson.
But my understanding is already zoned LC. Dale said, I think he said if it's zoned LC, it's already zoned LC. This is just a conditional use.
And typically, the screening requirement doesn't go in until the property is developed, so.
So it's already required to at least have a solid fence around it.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. This time we'll go out for comment. Anyone in the audience wish to talk?
Think so? Oh. Okay.
Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission.
I move to approve for staff comments.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Johnson, Bill Johnson, seconded by Mr. Klossmeyer. Discussion,
That include the landscaping?
That's what I was gonna ask. Does that include the landscaping requirement,
whatever is
even though
required.
it's already required
That's
anyhow?
already required, so.
Okay.
we
I
can
might,
require it.
I might suggest that you just add it to the conditional use. Typically, the only thing the people that design these things look at is the conditional use
Okay,
resolution.
that's fine.
Just requires the fence.
Yeah, I think just if you just say screening per the zoning code is fine. And
Okay.
that gives them all three options.
Johnson, you accept that? Mr. Klossmeyer? Accept that? Mr. Warren?
I guess my question would be what is the requirements then? What kind of, I mean, is a wood fence sufficient for that,
Yeah, the three options are a solid screening fence, a berm with landscaping, or a dense landscape planting.
And for now, in my book, that would be fine now because there's no residents within earshot of this, but there's gonna come a day, or there could come a day, I shouldn't say there will be. There could come a day when you're gonna have residential area in that, around that, and we're gonna wish we had something more than a wood fence. It's hard for me to imagine how we would put something on here today, though, that would require an action 20 years from now. So I've got you know, I'm kind of in a quandary. I'm not satisfied with a wood fence for long-term, but it more than makes sense for today.
So are you making a substitute motion?
I'm throwing out my questions for discussion to see if I'm the only one that thinks this way.
Foster?
I think it'd be appropriate, in addition to the solid screen requirement, to require meeting the buffering issue of the few trees and things that is in the zoning code. That would be on top of the solid screening.
The buffering's actually in the city's landscape ordinance, and this is in the.
Oh, I'm sorry, so I would say it should meet the city requirement then for the landscape buffer in addition to the solid screening. But I do question the benefit of going all the way along the south, given that 2/3 of that is simply a drive.
The other piece of information is the fire department typically requires a 20-foot wide driveway for access, so they're going to need the whole 20 feet for.
If they did a little shifting here, like on the building or something, I think they could create that buffer to the south portion of the building as well as the east side of the layout as well. So I think that could be met and consider leaving out along the drive itself. Just discussion.
To remove the screening requirement along the south boundary line would require a variance from the BZA.
Only for the building, only to the extent of the building on the south.
But no, the zoning code requirement is if they were to pull a permit on that lot, and because that lot goes all the way out to the street, they'd have to screen that entire south boundary.
I'm referring to the landscape portion of it. So I'm saying do the
fence has to go
screening
all the
as
way to-
required, but only do the landscape in the portion where it really needs it.
Mr. Johnson?
Guess I just want to get back to the motion we made because very little vehicles, headlights shining. I would think this is a great buffer between commercial property and residential. As far as air conditioners, I'm sure if any periodically, so I think we're getting off base a little bit here, so I'd like to,
I'll stay with the original motion
yes.
in the second. Okay, would anybody like to submit a substitute motion?
I've got a question. At the time this would be perhaps annexed into the city, does that change the screening requirements at that point in time?
It'd be
Be
non-conforming.
grandfather's non-conforming.
Mr. Foster?
I just offered a substitute motion, just only to add that the landscape buffer be included along the south, 228 feet south of the building, and then along the east side.
Second?
Discussion on the substitute motion. Seeing none, all in favor of the substitute motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Can I see a show of hands for the noes? I think it fails, and we'll go back to the original motion.
I was still writing the motion when you voted. What's the, who are the noes?
Ayes. Got them all? Mr. Florence too, I think. Were you a nay? Yeah. Okay, we're back to the original motion made by Mr. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Klausmeyer. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So it passes 11-1. Okay. Per the write-up. 11-1. Al?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle Kobe. I'm an associate planner. This is zone change 2018-32. It's proposed zone change from limited commercial zoning to central business district. along the south side of West Douglas Avenue between McLean Boulevard and Sycamore Street. Reason for this request is to provide the property with maximum flexibility in terms of code-required parking and building setback standards. The building is already existing and has been for some time. The building, as you can see on this aerial image, takes up the entirety of the parcel that it's located on. As I said before, Central Business District zoning mitigates issues such as setbacks and off-street parking. This property recently had a conditional use that was approved on July 21st for a nightclub in the city. That is kind of what triggered, that was sort of the catalyst for this case coming in front of you here today. The building itself has a parking agreement with the church over here for parking in this parking lot back here. And while that parking agreement, as far as I know, is still considered valid, the amount of parking spaces that it's for, when you add up all of the different uses in the building, though all of that added together exceeds the amount that the parking agreement is for. So the applicant was pursuing either a variance or a change of zone. Staff advised that a change of zoning classification would probably be the right way to go. As I noted in the staff report, there's a project underway by the planning department to update the Delano neighborhood plan that has not been approved by city council yet, although it has, that is where it's sitting right now. And so while the future plans haven't been ratified necessarily, one of the plans that's contained within that plan is to rezone all of Douglas Avenue between Seneca Street and the river, so extending along farther west than what this shows. The reason for that being that primarily everything is developed according to the provisions of Central Business District zoning as is, and there are some locations you can see in teal here, these colors that are already zoned Central Business District. I think what I'll do now is just kind of go through some of these. I believe you have all these images in your staff reports, and some of these are just to provide context for the plan. These first few come from Project Downtown. This is just to show that this site is located right here between two prominent gateways that are identified. This is to identify the walkable development nature. This site is right here, so it's kind of just right next to this most walkable today designation. And then here's just a retail analysis that was done at the time, showing a key growth direction being this direction. Some images from on the site with the nifty little guide over here to show you the orientation. So this is looking down the street to the west, southwest. This is looking back the other way. The application that I referenced earlier for the nightclub in the city is right here. This is looking across the street. On either side of this building that you see here are surface parking lots. This is behind the building. This is the area where the parking agreement is in place. And there's the church that the parking agreement is with. These are just some additional contextual images that I included just to kind of show that the pattern of development is pretty consistent and to provide context for just where this development is located at. Is there any questions?
Yeah, Kyle, I assume the parking lots across the street are private, not owned by the city. Is that correct?
As far as I know.
Okay. So with this new zoning requirement, how many parking spaces are they short?
I don't remember what the amount was when you add up all of the different uses in the building. I know that the amount that was required per the zoning code was something like 60 or something, according to MAPCD when they were analyzing it as far as building permits go. But as far as the entire building, I couldn't give you that number.
They're not gonna have to have any they won't have to have any parking with central business.
I understand if we change it, but right now I want to know without the change in zoning, how many are they short?
Again, I can't speak to that. I can tell you that the remainder of the uses are in place and have been up till now. I haven't received any complaints from anybody in regards to this, saying that there's been parking issues as a result of the other uses. And I also haven't received I have received inquiries from people about this, but to my knowledge or to my recollection, I haven't received anybody that was voicing opposition to it.
Mr. Richardson.
So Kyle, I'm guessing because they're short on parking, they don't have a lease agreement with all of the parking that the church has, because it has a lot more parking there than they would obviously need.
Right, it's for a portion of this parking area back here. It's for a large portion of it. And I don't have that image available, but there was at one point I saw something where they kind of outlined, but it was a pretty sizable portion of this parking lot that you see back here. The amount of spaces that were in it, I don't want to be incorrect about the amount that I'm citing, but it was 70 or 80, something like that, I want to say.
Any other questions for staff? I guess the only thing I'm concerned about is what happens to that property in the future, and how long is that lease for?
How long is the parking agreement for?
Yes.
I don't know what the terms of the parking agreement are. I don't know to what degree we can speculate about future development or if things are going to change, but
we'll ask owner or applicant. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Owner or applicant, please come to the podium.
Levi Bond, Cobb Valley Engineering, 200 North Emporia, Suite 100, agent for the applicants who are in attendance. We're in agreement with staff comment, and regarding the parking shortage that is current, Justin Strelo from Occidental Management can tell you the specifics on that, but by rezoning to Central Business District, we would be able to stay in compliance as there's no parking requirements after that. Would you like Justin to come to the podium?
Yes, please.
Justin Strelo with Occidental Management. We are the representative company and the developer.
Address, please.
8111 East 32nd Street North.
Thank you.
We are the managing entity for this landlord and this developer of this property. As staff had previously communicated, that we are seeking this just to relieve some parking strain. To give you some background on this, the parking requirement is established by the International Building Code based on occupancy load and not the intended design load. When we speak to the person our tenant that had the conditional use permit and Milk Flow, Hertz, and some of our additional tenants, the intended parking requirement and the average parking load is far less than what is currently required. I believe currently we have 60 stalls, and we're fluctuating depending on the average usage and loadage throughout the day. We're around 35 to 40. So we have to fit our needs, we have the parking requirement. This is strictly just technicality as far as how IBC addresses the load occupancy and how the zoning code addresses restaurants and entertainment facilities or nightclubs. For this use, it is for every 2 occupants, it is 1 stall. That took us to approximately 72 stalls required per the code. However, our intended use is we just honestly will not need that much parking spot. To the question about, the parking easement in the back, that easement is a private agreement and it's currently in perpetuity for the length of the property. And that's why we have that established. And if there's any questions, like I stated, the conditional use has already been approved. I know there was some concerns about being a nightclub in the city. to be honest, we got our tenant here. That is a technical definition. They are actually just more of an entertainment location, like most of you have probably thrown darts before. This is a small, self-contained axe throwing facility. So that is completely separate from this issue, but just letting you know, this is not a dance club. This is not a night hall. This is not anything that's going to have the quite foot traffic that others might expect. But this is how it's defined in the code, and this is how IBC addresses it. We have met with staff from MABCD and also MAPC. We feel that we have full support of staff. They've been very beneficial of this, and as it was stated by staff, the long-term plan for this area was to be rezoned as CBD, and we just requested to get out in front of it, be proactive. And I'm free to stand for any questions you might have.
Questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr.
The name implies that alcohol could be served, so are you going to do that?
Yes, I mean, as it's zoned, there is going to be some alcohol served, and then as the tenant can discuss, there's going to be fully contained facilities where they can be throwing axes, but completely secure.
Axes? Can you repeat that again? Throwing what?
Axes. This is called Blade and Timber. This is a very popular facility throughout the United States and a growing trend.
Yeah, I just didn't hear it.
But to speak on that, that's quite honestly a little irrelevant to, you know, what we're voting on today.
They take their alcoholic beverages in where they're throwing the axes?
I'm not clear on ABC regulations.
Well, I'm
Tenant
asking
can speak to
you,
no.
if you,
I'm not the owner and operator. I'm speaking here for the tenant and the landowner. But as far as we feel that per regulations and staff concerns, we've met the requirements and request that you vote that this be rezoned to CBD.
well, another question, what happens if you say it's in perpetuity for parking, and I don't see how wise people could give their parking lot in perpetuity to somebody. I don't understand that. That's just a comment.
Well, just as any agreement, it's any easement agreement, if both parties agree that it can be vacated.
Was that submitted to the planning department?
It is on record. It's a recorded document.
That wasn't the question. Was it submitted to the planning department?
Yes, Mr. Kobe has already spoke to that.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this case? Anybody in the audience wish to speak to this case? You're narrowing it down. That's good.
What's next?
Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for consideration.
I've got a comment. I've been working with the Delano district here as well as Cindy has, and I think this makes a lot of sense to rezone this to central business district. It just gives the area a lot more flexibility and will help in its viability, I think, in the future. So I'm going to vote for it.
Is that a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Got a question?
Just to be clear, we're just doing this for this entity.
That's correct.
Mr. Richardson.
A question for Scott on, I know we're reworking the plan for the Delano district. Do you foresee that including, we've talked about this before, rezoning this proactively as opposed to doing this one at a time? I know we've discussed that and we've said, well, we're redoing the plan. Do you see that something that might be brought forward here?
Yes, sir. It is in the draft plan that is under current consideration by the city council. At this point, what we're waiting on is council approval to proceed with implementation.
So we would maybe see a plan to rezone this proactively in some manner that's not just, as you can see, the map he had up there was, we're just spotting it as it comes up. Makes sense to me to do it as a part of a plan. I'm certainly not opposed to this.
Have we approved the Delano plan?
Yes, sir. The planning commission has approved it, and it has been deferred twice by the city council.
I just want to make a comment. As Rob said, both him and I have been serving on the Delano District Planning Committee, and I guess the one concern that I have about this, and I understand trying to be proactive with CBD, is that we have heard on that committee lots and lots of concerns about the lack of parking in the Delano District and how that parking just gets tighter and tighter. And we had a lot of retailers that are other businesses that are down in that area, as well as homeowners that have expressed a lot of concern about the tightness of parking as it exists. And so I'm not sure how that this will then compound that, and knowing that we will look at changing that zoning in the future, I'm not sure how that's going to affect parking either, although I think it's going to get more and more difficult to identify where people can park, and that's a frustration down that area. So I just wanted to share that.
Any other comments? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I made it. Need a second.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
It's 11-1.
12.
12-1. Who came? Oh, welcome. 12-1.
That's my own chairman.
Now we have case number 00033 for zoning and CUP 2018-00032. And Kathy Morgan will present this to us.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Kathy Morgan for the Planning Department. This is a zone change request and a conditional or a CUP amendment for the Dorothy CUP. I have the zoning map up here. The Dorothy CUP was approved in 2003, I think I said. Yes, 2003, and it was platted in 2015. And so there's two reserves, Reserve A and Reserve B at the either end of the CUP, and that's for drainage, signage, so forth. And what is being requested is that this limited commercial portion be changed to general commercial. And in the staff report, I gave you a copy of the language of the proposed development guidelines on CUP, and they are asking to add uses, commercial uses, construction sales and services, and construction-related vehicle sales and services in both Parcel 1 and Parcel 2. And then staff had requested additional changes in the CUP language on general provision number 9. We wanted that it addresses architectural control. We wanted to add that there shall be no predominantly metal facades on buildings that face Calvert Street. And then on general provision 15, add that trash receptacles, loading areas, trash receptacles, outdoor storage, and docks in the CUP shall be screened from ground level view, and we're adding along West Street, I-235, and Calvert Street, and outdoor storage shall be permitted only as accessory use to established permitted uses. And then in general provision 17, we added the last sentence, "This walk system shall link sidewalks along West Street and Calvert Street with the proposed buildings with the subject property as determined by the Director of Planning." So with those changes, let me go through you have to the north here is an established residential development that's been built out since the 70s. The YMCA South Complex to the east, and then it's bounded by the I-235 right-of-way on the southwest side. And as you can see, it's in an area that is considered appropriate for future growth, a mix of either residential there and also some employment use. This is a copy of the plat, and as you can see, here are the two reserves. This is showing 180-foot access into that property, and I had written in my staff report that there were two 80-foot accesses, and I think I don't know why this isn't showing the second one, but there should have been an access that is provided up here into what parcel one was going to, where parcel one is. I have had some phone calls on this. A major concern was the traffic, the commercial traffic that was going to come along Calvert Street, and that potentially in leaving the site, they would go through the neighborhood to get back out to West Street. So, or even go on up to West 31st Street South. So those were the comments that I've had. I think you should have in your package a copy of either one or two emails that I received that I passed along to you. So as you can see at this corner, or on this photo, I'm standing at the south end of the proposed site looking northwest on Calvert, and the CUP area is to the left of the street. And then I'm still at this south end of the site and looking back toward I-235, which you can't see because of the mature vegetation. Looking south at the site, this is the drainage ditch that will have to be traversed. They'll have to build some kind of bridge to provide access and also get the utilities across. This is the neighborhood on the northeast side of the property. Oops, sorry. And then just looking down Calvert Street, where the tree line is basically over in this area, if you see on the location map that I'm pointing at. And then this is the intersection of West and 235 in the middle right side of the picture. And this is at the south end of the site, looking directly west. And I will answer any questions that you may have.
Brad Johnson, Bill Johnson.
Now, Kathy, could you go back to that, where it showed them access points?
Okay, the
appears to me-
community unit plan shows one here.
That would be in the middle, that would not line up with any one of them residential streets.
That's correct.
Does the other one not line up with a residential
Well,
street?
I don't see the plat. This is the CUP, the plat. I failed to get a copy of the plat in. The plat has two. There's not another 80-foot access point, but it was up in this area, as I recall on the plat.
I would think if them were lined up where they're not lined up with a city or a residential street, that would keep people from driving straight through. They'd have to turn, so they just will go back to West Street.
Yeah.
Scott, you.
If you look at the drawing, It actually says complete access control except for one opening west of McComas. So that's where that second opening is. Not designated in a specific spot.
Oh,
So
so
Richards,
McComas is
Which street is
up
McComas?
here. McComas is up here.
but we could add a provision, Kathy, that said don't line up with any existing streets. I think it's a good idea that Mr. Johnson had there to do that. Kathy, just to comment, along the south side, that whole thing is a 15-foot bicycle path. Does that connect to anything on either end?
Let me go back to the aerial, not that I'm aware of. I think that's just a future plan.
It shows it's part of the plat, is it not?
There's an easement on the plat for a bike path, but
It's an
there is no
easement?
path existing.
Okay, it's just an easement, it's not a dedication?
Correct, it's an easement.
Ah, interesting.
Any other question, Mr. Blick?
On the plat, or earlier you said 80 foot, but on the plat it's saying 50 foot. Is it an 80 or 50 on here?
Well, it could be my eyes. It might be 50. I guess it is 50. Pardon me.
No problem. And then the second question I have is on Calvert Street, in between Leonide and All Hallows, there's a half block and it's gravel on Calvert Street.
Okay.
They bring a grader down there once a month and they grade that. So is that something that if there's a new development on that side, if they decide to pave that or not, or does it make a difference being on that street?
That would have to go through Public Works, and the people along that street would have to agree to pave it, but the development wouldn't require that to be paved.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I'd like to correct that. There is the plat required that this property petition for paving 100% of that street.
Okay.
Before they could pull a building permit.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Rob?
So how wide is the existing Calvert Street now, the pavement?
Calvert Street? It's, It's a local street. And I want to say it's 60 feet right of way.
I don't think we have the information on the exact width of the pavement, but it's likely 29 feet.
Is there parking provided on that street?
Permitted, yes.
It is permitted?
Yes.
And then the ditch in front of, along the street there that's 90 feet wide?
If that's what the plat says. Let me get you.
So everything on that property would be set back at least 90 feet from the street? And then all the buildings facing that way would not be predominantly metal, was that correct?
That was the addition that we recommend in the general provision, that the buildings facing Calvert but not be predominantly metal.
That means what, 50% not metal or?
Yes.
Okay.
Predominantly. Bill Johnson.
I want to touch that issue. If we go to an aerial and show the property that's due east of this, the YMCA's butted up to a residential area. And I hate to tell everybody, but them are all metal buildings. I don't quite understand. I mean, I'll support if that's what everybody agrees, but I just want to.
Sir, I'm sorry. Sir, you cannot talk until you get up. We can't pick up the recording. Okay, thank you.
The current CUP as it is adopted requires no metal facades. And so that was the compromise we were making.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
How did YMCA get away with it?
Not in this CUP.
Joe designed that.
I was worried there for a minute.
Yeah, Joe, how'd that happen?
Any other questions for the staff? Yeah, get them. Okay, we'll go to the applicant or agent, whichever.
Levi Bond, Caw Valley Engineering, 200 North Emporia, Suite 100. Agent for the applicant, Larry Cook, who is in attendance today. We would like this to be passed with our proposed language, not necessarily with what staff has recommended. We do want the requirement for metal facades to be lifted in this CUP. This is for construction, sales, and services. These are 35-foot buildings, potentially, and it's going to be economic hardship on the people who are developing it if they have to brick the whole thing or if they have to meet some architectural requirement. Right now, it's 60 foot of right-of-way, as you guys had mentioned previously in discussion, and then it's 90 foot of drainage, so it's already set back from that residential neighborhood. Plus, there's a screening requirement along Calvert. Speaking to staff's request on general provision number 15, which is also a screening request, we are in agreement to screen along Calvert, but we do not want to screen I-235 or West Street, as there are already established businesses along 235 that are not being screened. This is not a concrete production plant or anything like that. That's not an allowed use here. There's already a rock cutting place up here that has no screening. Air gas is right here. They have outdoor storage now. It's not screened from 235. So just similar request to that, and that'd be amended in this CUP. And then the final recommendation that we would like our proposed language used for and not staff recommendation is on general provision number 17. They're asking for sidewalks to connect all along Calvert back to West Street. This is not a just straight retail development. This isn't like a grocery store. This is anything like that. It's construction, sales, and services. Larry doesn't really want a whole lot of pedestrian circulation down there. He's going to have people come in and out with their truck. That'd be up to 1,500, 2,000 feet of sidewalk he'd be required to put in if that provision was left in the CUP and he developed the whole thing. And he doesn't see that from an economic standpoint down there. And there's not an existing sidewalk on the majority of Calvert already on the other side of the street or anything that he'd be mirroring at that point. It would just be on him to do that. And then, let's see, do you guys have any other questions? I was talking to Larry while you guys were bringing up the traffic concerns. He's completely fine with directing everyone who does come in here to take Calvert directly back out to West Street before they go anywhere and not to drive through this neighborhood. That's how he's planning on doing it anyways. As you mentioned, there's one opening here, one opening down here, and he's willing to, in the planning stages, make those openings to where they don't line up with those residential streets, kind of as you guys were recommending. I'm not sure if that's something we required through the CUP, but Larry's willing to do that on his own. Doesn't mess with his plans any. And I think that covers all of our points and answered most of your questions that you had previously. Are there any other ones I could address at this point?
Question on screening. Are you going to leave any existing foliage that's along 235, like the big trees and stuff? Because right now someone called me and asked me about something about sound barrier because of those trees right now from the highway.
On 235?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Larry's trying to keep some of them. Did you want to speak to that anymore? Do you know how many you're trying to keep? You can come up here and tell them if you'd like.
Please come forward and state your name and address.
So use the mouse as a pointer.
Okay. My name is Larry Cook, 1829 is my location, Wichita, Kansas. And along the, what I would say, 235 here, we want to keep quite a few of the trees that's in there. And then basically back behind here, basically what we're trying to do is scoot our building to the front, have our offices to the front and our building back behind. So we're trying to get the visibility of 235 coming there. So we want it to look really nice because our main business is construction. Like we just did a Family Dollar. We're doing the tag office right now. And so we really don't have a lot of people that come through here, but we just want a presence. So when people come down and see us, that's where it is. We don't run, we don't run a lot of trucks or anything else through there. It's basically our office. We want it to look really nice because that's our potential customers, maybe you guys, for the future.
One thing that I do want to say, just so you guys know, that's just Larry's future plans for here. That one of the reasons we don't want the screening requirements, because we don't want to pin anyone in back there on a certain number of trees per foot or anything like that. But around his building, he is going to have some trees, but we can't guarantee anything on the future development there if anyone else ever comes in.
Okay, Mr. Daly.
What would be the reason for not having or leaving the trees there that are already there?
I think Larry's planning on leaving them most of the ones he can when he puts his building in.
Well, that didn't answer my question. What would be the reason for not keeping them?
Do you want to answer that?
Well, there's some of the trees that's just been there. They just need to be cleaned up. They need a haircut and just get them to where the trees are more healthy and have a better look. And that's all we would be doing. It's not that we're trying to get rid of them. We just want to clean them up to we don't have a bunch of dead branches and so it looks better.
Well,
and as new buildings are constructed, they'd have to be removed for that reason. There's probably no direct reason why Larry would just cut down trees just to cut down trees.
Richardson.
Levi, is there a sidewalk requirement in the current CUP or not?
There is.
There is.
Yep.
And so you're asking for that to be removed?
Correct. We proposed the amended language, and I think in the current CUP, it does ask to go to West Street along Calvert. It wants us to tie in, but there's no sidewalks going south. I think the sidewalk stops somewhere back in here, and then the rest of Calvert doesn't have it. And then also Larry's, it's a construction sales and services business. He's not looking for foot traffic. He wants to keep his stuff secure and keep it nice and clean in there. He's not trying to get anyone to walk in. He'll provide the ADA access that's required with his buildings and the sidewalks around his buildings that he's required, but he doesn't necessarily need to connect to West Street for any reason.
Another comment I make about the screening would be, even though we're talking about a particular user, this site may be used for other things down the road. So I'm concerned about eliminating the screening here. That highway's pretty much on grade. Some of those others, you're above grade. As you get farther to the west, it's going to be really visible when you come around there. And, 10 years from now could be an entirely different use in that site, and it's a lot of highway frontage there. So I'm not sure what the right way is to screen that. And I think the staff tried to make an accommodation here by saying we would screen certain parts of it. Is that right?
The screening is the outdoor storage.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. And along the lines that you mentioned, this is being portrayed as a construction, sales, and service project, but there are a number of other uses that are permitted on this property.
Yeah. Thank you.
But the CUP does limit those uses if you look under the general revision number, the development guideline number 2, or parcels 1 and 2. Construction, sales, and services is more than likely the most intense use to be allowed on it per this CUP. Is that correct, Scott? Have you had a chance to?
I was just commenting that you said it was not going to be a retail development, but retail is specifically permitted.
Any more questions? Yes, Rob.
So which one of the recommendations are you not in agreement with?
1 through 3.
1 through 3?
We'd like our language as proposed to be approved. And then 4 through 6 are just standard things that the planning department requires, with 4, I think, being addressed in the latest copy I'd sent to Kathy Morgan, but I'll work with her on that.
Other questions for owner applicant?
Just a comment that I don't see a need for a sidewalk along there. It's more needed on the other side of the street.
Yeah, well, let's wait till we have discussion.
Okay.
Save that thought. Any other questions for the applicant or owner, since we have both? All right, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? This is the gentleman that's waited very patiently.
Seeing it
Yeah,
there.
right.
And how do I go forward and aft?
You want to go forward, it's use the wheel.
Okay, great. That's good. No, I'll go back to that one.
There you go.
Good afternoon. My name is Les Mosier. I'm a licensed professional engineer emeritus. I live on South Ninth Street. I have lived there 39 years. And I want this group to know that I don't disagree with developing in that area down there. What I vehemently disagree with is dumping the traffic from a commercial area into a residential zone. I think there's probably rules and regulations that say you can't dump commercial traffic in a residential zone. Am I correct?
We just have policies that say that we should arrange development so that it minimizes that opportunity. The traffic engineer, it really is the only one that could put weight limits that would truly address trucks and that sort of thing.
So, let me try and find, I live right here on Ninth Street,
What's your street address, sir?
3327.
Thank you.
And I'm concerned about the bus traffic in the area. This is a schoolhouse right here. And they have enclosed this area with a chain link fence so the kids can play at recess. But the bus loading and unloading zone is in this area right here. And there's 350 to 400 students, and they're almost all of them bussed in. And those buses come right past Calvert Street right here. And if you start bringing big trucks and that in and out of there, it's really a dangerous thing. There is on Leonine here at 32nd Street is the bus stop for the kids. This is a magnet school. There's a bus stop on Leonine in this area, and all of the kids to the middle school come in there in the morning, or no, they go over there in the morning, get on the bus, and go over to Kelly School or wherever, and then come back in the evening, in the afternoon. And if you dump that commercial traffic right here, and those trucks, heavy equipment, decide that it's this pinch point right here at Calvert Street, you've got 31st Street right here, and this is, in the morning, it's an abortion, it's trying to get out there. It's horrible. They need to put a light in there. Yesterday morning, I was gonna go over here to this convenience store, and I went north out of my house, up here to 31st Street, went over here because there's a light, and then I came back. So, pardon? Yes, please. Two. And,
Two.
And, a couple of things on, I can't find myself here. At this corner right here, 32nd at Ninth Street, there's a deaf kid. And what's going to happen is these guys are going to come out of this here, and they're not going to want to go down to this pinch point at Calvert. They're going to be like me. They're going to run up here to 33rd Street and come around, and they're going to be running through a residential district. No matter what he says, what his drivers are going to do is they're going to do like I did to get out, because they can't get out on Calvert Street. That four-lane traffic going one way early in the morning or late in the afternoon, that's absurd. My last points here is, they're talking about putting two bridges there. I have heard that they want to make them 4-lane bridges. The only reason they want to make them 4-lane bridges is because it's difficult to come down Ninth Street, turn, and get into that ground there. They talk about, and my last point is that they want to put outdoor storage there. That's piles of dirt, big piles of dirt out there. How do they get that dirt? They come down either Calvert Street or Ninth Street or Leonine, and then they go back in there and it's a dump truck. So if you take a medium-sized dump truck, 10 yards, at a ton a yard, that's 20,000 pounds, 8,000 pounds approximately for the truck. So we're talking about a 28,000 pound vehicle, mobile, going through a residential district. And they have to have the bridge big enough to handle it and wide enough. So what I'm proposing is that you limit the width of the bridge. You limit the tonnage that can go across that bridge, and in so doing, you limit the big trucks coming in and out of there. The other thing is, I haven't heard how big the garage door is in the light maintenance.
Thank you. Anybody want to ask him a question? Just a minute.
I'd like to make a motion that he has another minute of time, please.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
You have another minute.
Got a question.
Okay, well, I lost my train of thought.
Garage door.
Pardon?
Garage door.
Oh, the garage door on the maintenance shed. He's been telling everybody that he's going to do light maintenance there. Well, they do light maintenance on 747s. That doesn't mean light maintenance on little vehicles. It means light maintenance. So on the garage door of the maintenance building, if that thing's a 25 by 25 garage door, 20 by 20 garage door, then he's telling me that he's going to put a big vehicle in there. How does he get that big vehicle in there? He's going to go across that bridge, and he's going to go in through a residential district. Okay. I had a lot more, but I don't.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Dave?
Sir, I'd be curious, your comments of having a sidewalk along the north side of this facility and south of the residential. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually lived there when Justin Oster planted all those trees between the ditch and Calvert Street. And he used to walk down there with a bucket and water those trees along there. And people walk along where those trees are. And they're proposing putting two 60-foot openings and cutting down trees along that walkway. I don't have an opposition one way or another, because I kind of like to feel the dirt under my feet when I walk.
Any other questions? Rob?
Got a question. What bridges are you talking about that the trucks would have to go over?
Okay, they're gonna have to breach the ditch. This ditch, as the picture showed earlier, is, I don't know, 20 foot deep. It's a slough. And that is their only access point, is across those two bridges. I only heard one bridge, but the two bridges go across right there.
Why would that make them drive through the residential area?
Well, because Calvert, oh darn it. Am I gonna get back out? Yes, okay. What's happening is right here at Calvert Street, all of these north and south streets through here drain down into Calvert Street. And it's just a little 2-lane road. And then they're, oh, daggone it. And they all drain down here to Calvert. People drive out to the end here. And this is a 4-lane road, this West Street right here. And so what they're going to do is they're going to come out of here wherever the bridges are, and they're going to run up this residential district, go over here to a light, and then they'll either come south down to the interstate or go north up West Street. They're not going to I've sat there, I drove that route down to Calvert Street for 20 years. And it's almost impossible early in the morning. In the morning, when the 4-lane traffic's coming through here, it's difficult. And you take a truck, a 10-yard truck, and you get him up to that corner right there and try to get him out into that 4-lane traffic to go south. No, those guys are going to start running through the neighborhood. No matter what he says to them, they'll come out of there and start headed north.
I would think most of the traffic would be coming off the interstate, but if there's problems with traffic at the intersection, maybe you need a light or something in there. But I would think that most people would not drive through the residential neighborhood to exit this property anyway.
Well, that's one of my recommendations, besides only having a 2-lane bridge, limiting the weight on the bridge, limiting the garage door, also put a light at the end of Calvert Street, and then that would ensure that the guys run out there with their trucks and go down. But that's a cost to the city. Any other questions?
Can we forward those comments on to traffic? Thank you, Dale. We have no jurisdiction over the street, but we'll forward your comments to traffic engineering.
Question for Dale. Dale, does this have to be heard, or is there any information that's provided for the big slough for that board, that if there's bridges that are going or any changes in that ditch or anything like that? 'Cause I know that they're required to mow it. Is that the Valley Center thing or not?
Don't believe it's connected with the Valley Center floodway.
I believe this one is the Riverside Drainage District.
Yeah, it's like a township.
Riverside Drainage.
And they aren't proposing any changes to previously approved access points.
We're just building a bridge over it, not doing anything for that area.
That was previously approved when this was zoned 15 years ago or whatever.
Mr. Foster.
Scott, if you'd help on this item, Mr. Richardson brought up the idea that, this doesn't have to be the use we're talking about here, and it could change down the road. My question is, do you feel what's on the CUP in terms of permitted uses helps protect against decline in the land use down the road?
Well, the only uses that the applicant is proposing to change are the ones that he's mentioned, the construction, sales, and service, and associated uses with that. All of the other uses were previously permitted.
Would you suggest any changes? Say if the screening is pulled back on all along 235 and becomes more open, is there a concern for these permitted uses?
Staff is not recommending any changes other than the items that are contained in the staff report.
Questions? Bill?
I'm thinking back, it seems like we've heard 2 or 3 cases on this piece of property. I'm trying to remember what they were and where they went.
Would you like to ask a question to the gentleman in the audience?
No, I'm asking staff.
Okay.
What I remember was a self-storage facility that might have been called Fort Apache at one point was there. Yes.
What? Fort Apache.
We have any more questions?
Do we have rebuttal time?
Oh, wait a minute. We may have somebody else want to speak. Anyone else in the audience would like to speak on this? Come forward.
That's him. He's already.
No, you can't go speak.
Time's up. You're right, Tom.
Too long. Sorry.
Please state your name and address. Oh, no, wait till you get to the podium.
My name is Karen Wilcoxon. I live at 3423 Kessler. That's 4 houses up from Calvert. I'd like to know when she took the pictures because that street's never that empty. There's always cars parked along the side of Calvert.
I guarantee it's probably between 8 and
I
5.
drive it in the evening.
Could you pull the microphone down?
There's cars always parked along Calvert, In fact, a lot of evenings, I have to wait to let somebody get by because there's not room for both cars parked and two people passing on that street. My other concern is like this gentleman. This is a residential area with a lot of small kids in it, school buses coming and going. I just blows my mind how many school buses go through that area every morning when I'm leaving to go to work. I grew up in the construction business. My dad was one out in western Kansas. I know about big trucks. Spent 20 years farming and running a feedlot before I moved to Wichita. I know how much room it takes to turn a semi around. I used to watch it on a daily basis when the semis came into the feedlot. So I'm a little concerned about the size of those bridges too, because I'm just wondering how they're going to make that if there's a car parked on the side there at Calvert. Is one of my big concerns. But the traffic going through our residential area when kids are outside playing and you've got big trucks coming down the road, it's just scary is what it is to me. And I agree with the gentleman. I no longer go to that light when I leave in the mornings to get on 235 to go to the east side of town. I now go up to 31st, go to Meridian, and go get on 235 off of Meridian, because there's no way I can cross Calvert, because first it's either school buses. If I wait a little bit, then it's UPS. And if I'm a little bit earlier, then it's UPS coming off of 235 going into their building. And so the traffic there is just miserable. Even at night, when I come home at 10 o'clock some nights, it's hard to get across that street because of the traffic that's on West Street. So I wish you guys would really come and visit our neighborhood and see what it's really like in the mornings between 7 and 9 o'clock. And then again from about 4 to 6 o'clock, and see what the traffic is like off of there.
Thank you.
I'd be willing to answer any more questions. I just have my concern about the small children in our neighborhood.
Ma'am, I'd be curious, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts regarding a sidewalk along the north side of this property?
Since I love to walk and run, and I do that street, and I'm out in the street, I'd love to have a sidewalk, because that other area up off of it is full of sandburrs right now. And it's no fun to get sandburrs in your shoes and everything. If there was a sidewalk there, that'd just make everything really a lot nicer.
Dave, you have another question?
Just follow-up question, what are the points of connection if you're going, eastward there? I can obviously see out to west there, but is that going to take you, would you walk up by the school then? Or are you able to go on over to the YMCA?
Well, usually, the way I go is I go over to 33rd Street and over to that school. A lot of times I walk clear over to the Y, but I just sort of weave myself through the neighborhood is what I usually do.
Thank you.
Can I clarify one thing you said? I assume that you're talking about the neighborhood parking on the street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any other questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak? Seeing none, we have 2 minutes for the rebuttal. Please put the microphone back up.
Levi Bound, Caw Valley Engineering. Thank you, Mr. Moser and Ms. Wilcoxon, for your comments. We understand your concern about traffic in that area, and as the Planning Commission has told you, they don't have jurisdiction necessarily over the traffic. Larry Cook is definitely willing to direct anyone who's coming in or out of his facility to go down to West Street by using Calvert, and he doesn't see why they would want to have to go through all of this residential here and deal with all the people, all the parked cars, and especially if there's as many school buses and kids as you're mentioning, why they would want to take that route. And I understand that you think we're going to do whatever we're going to do, and I can just tell you what Larry's told me. Other than that, I think that was your main concern was the traffic, which we understand, and then also one thing is, seems like there's a little bit of confusion on access points. There is platted access to probably, I think it's right about here. Let me go back to the CP real quick. So we have platted access, one opening to here, I believe. I'm just looking at the PDF. And you can put one box structure and a bridge over that swale there. And that's where his access point would be. Other than that, be happy to answer any other questions at this time.
Mr. Warren.
A lot of questions and concerns about trucks and types of trucks. Construction companies there are all kinds. There are some construction companies that use large pickups, and there are other companies that use, 18-wheelers. What kind of construction is this? How many vehicles will be in and out on a day? Are we looking at 18-wheeler trucks? We're looking at pickup trucks? And are they in and out? Do you guys do road construction, or that, whoever can answer that?
Larry, would you like to answer that, since you can get particular with it? I know it's pretty light. It's not his whole fleet or anything.
Just so you kind of get a better understanding of what it is, right now we're located at 1829 West 13th, which is just McLean and 13th. We've been there 10 years. 7 people we work out of that office, and most of us are in light pickup trucks. The only thing that will happen is we're going to put a facility there. Probably 98% of the times our trucks are at the jobs. Like if you go to Alter Modern right now at Edgemore and Kellogg, you'll see our vehicles right there. We just finished a Family Dollar. So when we go job to job, that's where we're stationed at. My guys go there. They don't come to the office. So what happens is it's like a sales crew. I have a secretary that's there, and that's kind of what we do. So we have one dump truck, and I have 2 semis. The only time that those would come in there is if we were doing work on them.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess your time's up. We'll bring it back to the commission.
Thank you.
Mr. Warren.
I would move to approve per staff comments with the exception of removing item B1 of the recommendations, which is the predominantly metal facade provision. Removing B1 from the recommendation.
Second. So we have a motion by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. McKay. Mr. Daly has a question.
Does that have anything to do with sidewalks then?
That would be you'd have to either amend my motion or do a substitute motion if you wanted.
Sidewalks in.
Sidewalks is part of the conditions, and I did not remove that.
I've got a comment
I
on
don't
the
see a
sidewalks.
need for sidewalks there.
Based on I'm in agreement with Chuck, and I think sidewalks, we've just completed a big plan for walkability in the city that, in the future, we're trying to promote more walkability. So I think sidewalks is a necessary thing for this, or any project that we develop in the future. So I'm in agreement with sidewalks staying in.
There's no motion to take them out at the present time. Josh?
I just want to make sure I'm actually in favor of the motion that's out there. I'm pretty familiar with this area. I'm president of the neighborhood association down south of that area. And both my kids went to Cleveland, so I do understand what the traffic and everything. But I think with the map showing with the bridge that is going to go in between the 2 streets into that and that street, I think that's going to help relieve a lot of that pressure from those side streets, and it's going to kind of force them. I would like to see that the map shown that I think it was on Knight Street is where that second bridge is, since we weren't shown that. That will also be in between 2 of the side streets also.
Do you want to see that?
No, it wasn't on our maps and stuff, so it was told to us, but I just wanted to make sure it was known.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, and Mr. Foster has a question.
Scott, I think it'd be helpful if you'd explain the benefits of saving some of the existing trees and things, but if you would just describe how those can possibly count toward any of the required buffer or the screening that.
Sure. One of the options for screening of outdoor storage and work area is to use landscaping, and existing landscaping will count towards that requirement. I went by and looked at the site, and the trees there are pretty thick already, so likely that is going to be the most cost-efficient way. Most cost-efficient way for them to provide that screening along I-235.
Thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? 13-0. Okay, let's go back to the minutes of May 24th. I think we have a quorum for that.
I think Dool was gone.
Yeah, but he was gone, so.
I move we approve.
But we're okay, I think. I think we have 8. Okay, Johnson, Richardson, Dool, Klausmeyer, Blick, and Hartman are all gone. Everybody else raise their hand that's here. Wait a minute, don't leave yet, John.
John,
you
yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
You were here.
You were here for 24, yeah.
Yeah, you're on
So
the
raise
list.
your hand, please.
And we need you to.
You're showing.
Everybody, it's
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Who made the motion, by the way? And who seconded it? Okay, we got that.
Who was the second?
All opposed? Seeing none, all abstained. We got 5, only 4 here. So we have those abstentions. It passes 8-0.
Yeah, that hold things up forever.
Is that all the minutes we needed to approve?
Yeah, we did the rest. Don't screw me up.
Maybe.
Figure it out, but I just need to know who the abstentions are.
No, she pulled it.
You're not gonna talk to us about other meeting dates, though?
Who couldn't vote? It's all up.
That we're here?
Well,
Me, Lowell, Dool, Klausmeyer, Blick, and Hartman. There were 6 that couldn't vote. 5 were here. So 5 from 13 is 8, so we have.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any problems putting that plywood stuff down. Are we adjourned yet?
The meeting, we're adjourned.